story starts with once upon a time. People say it, once upon a time there was a kingdom. And this kingdom was a really funky kingdom. It was a really nice kingdom. It had amazing coloured houses. It had red houses and blue houses, and some houses had dots on them, and the people of the kingdom were really, really nice because they were really well looked after. The kingdom had ethics, you know. It was built on connection and love and harmony, and the people that ruled the kingdom, well, there was a king and a queen. They were such a lovely king and queen. The queen had lovely crown, so did the king. That's what happens when you're royalty. They were wearing a crown. They wear crowns. Everybody, let's rejoice in the king and the queen and their kingdom. And everybody in this kingdom was happy. They worked, they played, they lived. They were connected with nature, with the elements, with the birds that flew past their window as they would draw art. Lovely, lovely, jubbly. Alas, there was one thing that was known in all of the kingdom. The king and the queen had really had a deep grief because no matter how hard they tried, and they tried a lot, they could not have a baby. They couldn't get pregnant. And they tried to have a baby and it just wasn't happening, you know? It just wouldn't happen. And that was like really sad for them. You know, as it is for some women who get to a certain age and they've never had a baby, and that's all that they've ever wanted. And that's all that the queen had ever wanted, and the whole of the village kingdom, they knew this. And the queen was getting older, and she was taken to walking around her palace. Her palace is amazing. It's full of forests and rivers, and she has a little boat that she rides along the river. And outside of her veranda, she's quite, looked after queen. Outside the veranda is a pond. And one day she was walking around this pond and she was feeling particularly down, because her eggs were finito, almost finito. Es finito. That is Spanish for finished. And as she was walking around the pond, just quite slow, quite feeling sensitive, suddenly a huge frog jumped out. Whoa, a frog in my path. The queen thought, that's really odd. Ribbit, ribbit, you shall have a baby. Ribbit, ribbit. What? Me? Have a baby? I can't have a baby. I'm old. Ribbit, ribbit, you will have a baby. Ribbit. And before the queen could ask the frog any other thing, the frog disappeared into the pond. The queen looked, and all she could see was a reflection in the currents of the water. Baby? Me? No. She went home. She was laying in bed that night with her husband by her side, and she was like, should I tell him? It's not very often that a frog speaks to you, but I love him. And so she turned to him and she said, this frog told me we're going to have a baby. Oh, right. That would be so beautiful to see like that, the king said. That would be so beautiful. And he held her all night with his arms on her belly. It was very whimsical, although he just thought that's totally not possible. And the days passed. There were many breakfasts, many suns, many rains, many moons, and her belly grew. There was a little butterfly inside that grew and grew and started to flap his wings, and his belly was growing, and she was having a baby. She told everybody after a certain amount of time to know that it was, healthy. She told everybody, having a baby, I'm having a baby. Everybody was super happy. Finally. So the queen took to going around the forest and in the boat and loving life and letting her days go because she was really swollen now and really poor. And then she went one more day outside for a walk to the pond. She went to the pond, and what do you think was there? Jumped out
frog.
Ribbit, 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 ribbit. Hello, frog. You will have a baby girl. A girl. Remember, remember, all is all. All is all. Remember, remember, all is as it is. And before the queen could say anything, the frog had jumped back into the pond with a splash. And she looked in the pond and she swore that she could see a baby girl swimming away. It was that day. And the baby came. Oh, beautiful baby girl. It's a girl! It's a beautiful girl, the king said as he went out of his veranda, screaming to the world, it's a girl! Now, if this was a musical, all of the village would start to sing and dance and play. It's a girl!
It's a girl!
It's a girl! It's a girl! Whee! The ballerinas came, dancing. Suddenly, all of the villagers began to celebrate, and the shoeman made beautiful shoes with the name of the girl on the sides, and the seamstress made tapestries with her face and her name and the date with balloons. The baker made souffle, huge, for everybody to try. Souffle, 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 souffle. And the king said, we must have a christening. We have to have a celebration. And it will be the biggest celebration that you've ever seen. And so the grand hall was ready and made, and there was a chandelier and a disco ball and beautiful things all over the walls. And everybody was invited to their wedding. And I mean everybody. So they invited the women that sweep the floor, they were invited, and they invited the people that sewed the tat, and they invited the people that fed the cat, and they invited the people that got rid of the rats, and they invited the people that did their hair, they invited their maids, they invited all of their friends, all of the people from all the different kingdoms were all invited. You are invited, you are invited, you are invited, you're invited, you're invited. You're invited, please come. You're invited, you're invited, you're invited. You're invited. In the hall, grand hall, there was a magical harp that was playing all by itself. I know in this story we've got Finn here. We need him, but in this story, there's a magical harp. Now in this kingdom, there are 13 fairies, okay? But there's only 12 gold plates and 12 gold gift boxes. So the queen was like, uh-oh, what are we gonna do? We can't. We're just gonna have to invite 12 of them. And the king was like, yeah, okay, great, just do that. And then they just forgot about it. They let it go and they got ready for their beautiful wedding. Wedding? Christine, keeping you on your toes. So it was, the people came in, bringing their gifts, bringing their presents, and the 12 fairies entered one by one. The first fairy was wearing yellow and bright like the sun, and the whole room became warm. Can you feel that warmth in your heart as the fairy comes in and sits at her place with the gold plate? The next fairy comes and she is like the sky with white, cloudy flares. She looks so beautiful. She comes in and she does a little twirl and she sits at the plate. Another comes who is like the forest with leaves in the hair but beautiful and leaves following her. And she comes and she sits by the plates and so on and so forth. We've got purples and crimsons and red and all the colours of the rainbow, and all of the 12 fairies come and they sit. And then it is time for them to bring their gifts and their wishes to this beautiful baby. So now this is where you come in. And I ask you to come with your gift and bring it to this baby and offer it. And tell us all. Adventure! And the first fairy wished for adventure for the little baby. And you. The second fairy comes wearing purple. She is ready.
Confidence.
And she gives her the gift of confidence. Hot. And the next one comes wearing white, ready to go. She is here. And she brings the gift of...
Remember the first snack after school.
Pardon?
The first snack after school.
Remember the first snack after school. Amazing. And the next fairy comes. Wow, and she's a cake. Yeah, and she comes and she brings the wish of acceptance. May this baby have acceptance. And the next fairy comes.
I have got a wish.
But you didn't have a wish. Do you have one now that you can think of? You can stay there and...
Love.
Love! She thinks, oh, I hope you have a life full of love. And the next fairy comes, red like an apple, satisfied and full of
Self-belief.
self-belief. And the next fairy comes, beautiful, and offers artistic achievements. This is a very lucky little girl, right? And the next,
I bring joy.
and she offers joy. Joy, joy, joy. And the next,
I offer innocence.
and she offers innocence. And the parents are overwhelmed. And the 11th fairy comes, looks at this beautiful baby, and offers her the gift of child. All of a sudden the doors slam open, and in comes the 13th fairy. She's got buzzard wings and corns and wearing all black, and she struts to the front and she looks at the queen in her eyes. How dare you not invite me? You invited everybody. You invited the maid that squeaks the crumbs off the floor, and you did not invite me. How do you think that makes me feel? Well, I'll show you why you should have invited me. I curse this baby. When this baby is 15, she will go to a spinning wheel. She will prick her finger on the spinning wheel and she will die. And with that she disappears and black smoke fills the room. And then the 13th fairy, 12th fairy comes. She says, I still have a wish. I still have a wish, and I can't stop this. I can't stop this curse, but I can soften it. I can soften it. So my wish is that when this princess is 15, she will prick her finger on a spinning wheel, but she will fall to sleep for 100 years. And everybody let out a sigh. For that was surely better than death. There was a little fly in the room at the party and it wanted to also give a wish. And it came. And it looked at the baby and it said, I wish for you to love nature more than anything. And that is what happened. The baby was a beautiful baby. But before the baby goes off on her journey, let's go back to this room, to their christening. You see, the people of the village didn't want to leave. They didn't want to leave the young girl and the king and the queen. And so they all stayed, and it was a bit of a strange christening. And then the king normally would give a speech, but instead he said, I command that every single thing with any kind of needle or spinning wheel is abolished, is completely destroyed. And that was what happened. Everything went, and fires were done, and anything that resembled anything of that. How did you get in? Of that type was abolished. But the baby grew. She grew, she grew, she grew, she grew. And she was so healthy. And she loved adventure. She loved it. She went out in the mud. She was always playing in the mud. She was throwing the mud at all the other children. She was wild. She was full of self-belief. Anything that she wanted to do, she knew that she could. She was charming and beautiful and able. And as she grew, she was really, nourished in so many ways. In so many ways. She was nourished and she flourished. Superly flourished, and she grew, and everybody was like, I've not seen that 13th fairy. I don't know, I've not seen her. Have you seen her? I think we might be good. And the baby turned into a toddler, turned into a teenager, and she started to get hair in places that she didn't know she was going to get hair. She was like confused, and also kind of having this sense of like wanting to be away, to move away from her parents. So her adventures got deeper. And her belief got stronger. She started to leave the castle. She would go on that boat, and she would go out into the forest, and she would climb trees. And she would look, and she would talk to the bees and the birds, and she was so connected with nature. And she was kind. And then her 15th birthday came, and her parents made sure she stayed in a room in the palace, and they looked after her all day and nothing happened, and they thought, I think it was all a joke. Well, it's fine, there's no curse, there's no fairy. But they were wrong. They were very wrong. But one day, the little, not so little 15-year-old troubadour left the castle just as always, went in the forest just as always, went down the path just as always, but this time she saw a tower, a huge tower that she'd never seen before, and the door was ajar. She was confused. What's this? Well, she went to see. She went in, creak, and there was black stairs, marble. She climbed the stairs. She got to the top, and she could see a woman with crazy hair and leaves and bones, and her face was so wrinkled, and it was as if roots had come out of her feet. She was an old woman. She was alive. She had dirt and feeling, and she was spinning. She was weaving, sewing. Obviously, our princess had never seen anything like that before. Come in, little one. And it was as if there was a magnet. She was really drawn. She said, what is this? And before she knew it, her finger was kind of leading her to this, and she pricked her finger. And one drop of blood fell, and she fell into the arms of the woman. It is done. She said, it is done. She laid her down, and she left. In another part of the city, kingdom, the baker was baking bread and making pizza, and he'd thrown the pizza in the air, and suddenly he felt so sleepy. Oh, he fell asleep. The king was reading his newspaper, having a good time, and suddenly, he felt so sleepy. The girl was so sleepy. Oh, I'm so sleepy. And everybody went to sleep. Everybody in the kingdom, and the only thing that was left was that enchanted harp that was playing. and the sun set, and the moon rose again, and the roses bloomed and died, and the creepy crawlies crawled, and the spiders made their webs, and the frost froze them away. The tides blew, the wind blew, and seeds of change. Time passed. Wind blew leaves. Now in another part of the kingdom, in another part of the world, there is a kingdom. I don't know whether to invite you to sit back up or if you want to stay down, it's really up to you. So, in another part of the kingdom, no, in a different kingdom, far, far away, there is a story, there is a myth that there is a princess who is under a spell and is enchanted, and that she's living in a tower that is surrounded by brambles and thorns and that are absolutely humongous and that nobody can enter. But if you are to enter, then you will meet love. She is beautiful, full of charm and self-belief and adventure. So many men, so many women, so many people felt the call and went all the way over different lands. They took trains and cars and bicycles to go to this tower and to try to get in. But it is almost impossible. So these thorns are poisonous, and if you even touch them, you will die. And the tower looks as though it has got a white collar from all of the skulls that had tried to get to the princess. Men tried and died. Men on their horses tried and they both died. But there was this one particular young prince who was full of gusto. And when he heard this story, it was almost like a little butterfly woke up in his heart. And he knew that he had to go there. And so he began to go. He took his horse and he rode and he rode and he rode and he rode over mountains, in the oceans, in the forests. He went through all your inner landscapes until he found the right place, and he went into the forest. And he saw the tower that stood tall. It was a dark night. The thorns were so large, and he saw all of the skulls on the floor. He picked up a skull, and he knew this is an enchantment, and he wondered, how might he get through? How might he get through? And so he found the 12 fairies, and he asked them, can they help him? And they said they can't. They said all is as it is. So he spent days walking around and around and around and around in a daze, having no idea how he was going to get in. He didn't know what ways to try. He didn't want to die. He wanted to be. He wanted to meet. He wanted to feel. So he kept on walking. And he kept walking, and it was almost as if he was delirious. And one moment he looked and he saw that there was a gap. There was a gap in the thorns, just small enough for him to get in. Wow. He left his horse and he went in the gap. He went through the gap. And he walked. He couldn't believe it. He walked and he walked and he saw a door, and the door was ajar, and he went open the door and he went up and up and up the stairs. He was scared, but he went up the stairs. And before he reached to walk into the room, he saw her. She was stunning. She was stunning. Oh. She was so peaceful, not a frown or a line of worry. She just looked so content. And that butterfly started to really flitter. Oh. And she woke up. She woke up and she looked at him. She couldn't tell if she was dreaming. She couldn't tell if she was dreaming. She'd been dreaming for a really long time. She just really didn't know if she was dreaming, but she kind of came to and she did see him. And he said, it is said that the person that comes here of true heart means that we will love. And I really ask you to really consider that that is me. And the princess says, okay, well first you have to ask permission from all of the fairies. First, the 13th fairy. Now the woman who told me this story says in her tradition that the old people, that there are 12 more stories because this young prince goes to all of the fairies asking for permission, and each one of those fairies gives him a gift and an attribute that is just as amazing as the one given to the princess. And then he goes to that old woman with crazy hair and leaves and bones, as if she is an oak of wisdom with roots shooting out, and he asks her. She gives him her blessing and says, all is all, remember. All is all, ribbit, ribbit, remember. All is all, ribbit, ribbit. And that is the end of our story. Thank you. So letting the story just be with us, seeing what images, where we find ourselves in the story now. Letting all of that kind of wash over us, and seeing what images we see, who we see, which part. And reminding yourself of that question that you wanted some answers to. And if this story was a teacher, what answer would it give you? And if you'd like, you can write. You can have a little moment to write now for the next few minutes, or you can just lie here. Well, yeah. And let the story be.